Hey there, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Thanks for joining us on TCM, where the first 3 Thursday nights in November are being spent with the films of Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. As a filmmaking team, Powell and Pressburger, known as the Archers, the name of their production company, wrote, produced, and directed some of the most respected movies of the 20th century. We just had an early effort from the duo. One of our aircraft is missing from 1942, which was the first film that credited the pair as the Archers. Up next, an encore presentation of a documentary that had its TCM premiere last week from 2024, Made in England, films Powell and Pressburger. This is an in-depth look at the career of the two men who collaborated in one way or another on more than 20 films over roughly 30 years. The executive producer and narrator is one of their biggest champions, also a staunch advocate of TCM. It's Martin Scorsese. When we presented this documentary at our TCM Classic Film Festival back in April, the two producers, Nick Varley and Matthew Wells, introduced the movie. After the screening, Nick and Matthew sat down with our crew and discussed the vital role film archives around the world played in getting their documentary made.
We had a wonderful archive producer. I mean, really, we knew where all the films were. The films were not the issue. The issue when you're making a film, a documentary about people working in the 1940s and 50s, that unlike today, there wasn't a lot of, on-set interviews. There were, these things didn't really exist. And what Sam Dwyer, our archive producer on the film, did was she really dug deep and found things that no one knew existed. And one of the big challenges at the start of the film was that there is a lot of archive of Michael Powell talking, but Emmerich didn't do so many interviews. So one of the worries that David Hinton, the director, had was that this could be very unbalanced unless we found enough material of Emmerich talking. And we were very fortunate from the Canadian archives, the Australian archives, to find some footage that hadn't been seen for many years. And actually, one of the real gems, and we must shout out to the Hungarian Film Archive, who were wonderful in making this film, they found some footage of Emmerich on the set of a film in the 1920s, I think.
And behind the scenes on A Matter of Life and Death, absolutely amazing. You see them making a movie. I've never expected to see that. It's incredible.
So little gems like that just add that extra bit of special to the film.
These are events a long time ago that you don't expect to find a lot of footage. You don't expect to find a huge amount of kind of interview material and things like that. But to have been able to find enough, for the team to have found enough that, personalities come through so strongly and you get such a kind of sense of warmth between them, and the warmth that the filmmaking team has for them, Scorsese and Thelma and David, it was made with such love, and I think you can feel that in the film.
That was Nick Varley and Matthew Wells, who produced the documentary we have for you now. As they hinted at, you're about to see some really incredible archive footage of Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Here it is, from 2024. Narrated by Martin Scorsese. This is Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger. The team behind Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger, are, no surprise, major fans of the Archers. Producers Nick Varley and Matthew Wells joined us in Hollywood in April at the TCM Classic Film Festival, where we screened the documentary. Afterward, the producing duo discussed this project and answered a question they get asked regularly.
One gets asked this question a lot: which is your favorite film? And for me, I always say the same thing, because Black Narcissus for me is my favorite Powell and Pressburger film. It's beautifully shot. I think the cinematography in that film is amazing. But the scene in that film where Sister Ruth sees red, it's wonderful. Just filling the screen with red, I just think it's amazing.
There's a thing that they do incredibly well that lodges in my brain. It's not so much a scene. The way they shoot landscapes, Canterbury Tale and I Know Where I'm Going in particular, the way they use the landscape in those movies, and the landscape kind of contributes to the story, and it has this sort of mood, it puts you in this headspace. I think that's absolutely extraordinary. It's the colour, it's the music, it's the performances, it's the design. You could write books about it.
This journey started because of the love that everybody involved in the film had for Powell and Pressburger, and we just hope that that comes across in the film.
Thank you to producers Nick Varley and Matthew Wells for speaking to TCM about Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger. Nick mentioned his favorite Powell and Pressburger film is Black Narcissus, starring Deborah Kerr. We'll have that for you next week when we wrap up our salute to the Archers. Coming up in just a few minutes, the first film Deborah Kerr appeared in for Powell and Pressburger. She stars alongside Roger Livesey and Anton Walbrook in the life and death of Colonel Blimp. That is next on TCM.